Generosity is the essence of friendship, said Oscar Wilde. But I'm going to take it further. Generosity is the essence of life, of love, of time, in fact, of 7 other areas of my life. I was sharply reminded of this last week when I couldn't decide whether to extend a visit to my son by one day, when I weighed up the expense of a much-needed air fryer I wanted to buy as a gift, and when a newbie YouTuber asked for advice. It was all about, how generous am I really? Join me today as I share what generosity is and the 7 other areas where it's generosity beyond money. I'm the Forest Fairy. Welcome to my corner of the woods where I'm rebuilding, revamping, redesigning a magical life and hopefully inspire you to gather your own fairy dust. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fabulous week. I've just come back from a refreshing break and adventure in the Drakenstein area of the Western Cape. It's the area where the French Huguenots settled when they fled France in the late 1600s. A few of my forefathers are among the 300 who made South Africa their home. It's also surrounded by magnificent mountains, boasts many of the country's best wine farms and cellars, and is populated by enormous oaks planted by these early settlers. It was these oaks with their sprawling branches and cool, generous shade in the extremely hot summers that fascinated me and became the perfect example of generosity and visual backdrop for this conversation. The definition of generosity is the readiness to give more of something than is necessary or expected. As an extension, I would add that it should be genuine and nothing is expected in return. Not always easy. It seems to be up there with kindness and gratitude, and most of the holy teachings and books encourage generosity strongly. The Buddhist monk and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh said, "It takes time to practice generosity, but being generous is the best use of our time." Even the Stoics say that no one became poor by being generous. However, generosity can sometimes be thwarted by a scarcity mentality. You know, that voice that whispers in your ear that you shouldn't be so generous with your money or your love or your patience or your laughter, because there isn't enough for you and others, and maybe they wouldn't appreciate it or even reject it. A scarcity mindset is a topic that deserves more attention and depth than what I planned for this conversation. And I suggest you do some work either on your own or with an expert if you find that you're more focused on scarcity than abundance. My 5 cents worth from my experience and learnings is that you are enough, and you will always have enough for yourself and to give away. The uplifting thing about being generous is that it activates the hormone oxytocin. This is our love, friendship, and cuddle hormone. The one that makes us feel connected, causes warm, fuzzy feelings, and as Simon Sinek, author of Start With Why, says, the unicorns and rainbows in our lives. Simon also emphasizes that acts of kindness, gratitude, and generosity all raise oxytocin, but surprisingly for the 3 groups of people: the giver, the receiver, and the witnesses. He says it's Mother Nature's way of getting us to look after each other. I'll link his video below. As I mentioned, the photos of this week's conversation were taken in the Drakenstein area of the Western Cape, and most on the historic wine farm Leeuwensjag, meaning hunting lions. It's now known as the Spice Route. I was enchanted by the trees, the beautiful vistas, and the history. Although it was a hazy day, Table Mountain could even be seen in the distance. Wonderful artisanal nooks with some of my favorite things, spices, teas, and chocolates are tucked away among the trees. There is a lovely eatery and, of course, tastings for the discerning wine lover. Now, while generosity is usually associated with money or material things, I believe there are more areas where I can and should be generous. There are probably many more, but I have 7 additional areas. Drop a comment below if you want to add to this list. How generous am I with my love? Do I keep it close and hidden for fear of rejection or disapproval? Or am I critical, judgmental, dismissive, gossipy, instead of coming from a position of love? And here it's not only about my nearest and dearest, but my interactions with strangers, cashiers, car guards, or people who don't have the same views and opinions, culture, or personality than I do. Honestly, being generous with my love is an ongoing commitment. Making time is more often a challenge for me. I can easily feel guilty about not visiting my mom enough. And then, because these visits often take 3 to 4 hours, I feel guilty about not working. This in spite of the fact that I often say guilt is a waste of energy. So being generous with my time is another area where I really need to manage my mindset and approach. The saying that patience is a virtue and virtue is a grace. Don't know how much grace I have, but patience seems to be linked to both love and time for me. Taking the time to be lovingly patient and to ensure that I relax into the moment and don't harbor those tiny pops of irritation and anxiety. Energy, on the other hand, can be viewed two ways. The first is my actual physical energy. I think life has become physically easier over the past 100 years as we don't do so much physical labor anymore. So then, how generous am I with my energy when requests are made, for example, for volunteers to assist with the clearing of the village pathways, or the cleaning and clearing of my mom's cupboard? The other way to consider energy is the energy that I exude. Am I friendly and open, smile and greet when out and about? How do I make people feel when interacting with them? You know, the adage of leaving people better than when you found them. And as Vin Young, an expert in communication, says, this type of energy opens doors, can lead to upgrades, to lucky breaks. I'll also add his link to his short in the description below. Knowledge is a tricky one because I think I can sound like a pompous ass when sharing my knowledge, and is the one I need to dial back on many times. I have so much info rattling around in my head, and I often have to remind myself that most of it is uninteresting and useless to others, and they don't want to hear it. As an INFJ, I love to learn new stuff, need to understand everything with a strong emphasis on everything, and I'm apparently a humble intellectual snob. But on the serious side, I recently gave a friend and fellow YouTuber some guidance, and it had me wondering, did I share willingly and generously to make it easier for them? Did I share enough? Do I force more info on them, or do I wait for questions? Do we sometimes keep our trade secrets hidden, especially from people in the same industry, for fear of competition? Or do we just very subtly ignore requests for guidance? And recognition is much in the same way. Do I regularly and generally recognize people for their achievements? Publicly, verbally? This one is easier for me because words of affirmation is one of my love languages, which I didn't realize until someone actually pointed it out to me many years ago. But do I do it generously? Do I regularly compliment people, whether it's on their appearance, on something they did well, or whatever? The world is tough, and many are just forging ahead or just trying to get ahead. And an unexpected compliment or recognition may have the power to change someone's day or even their life. Some of us are starved for compliments and recognition, even if it's just a "you're doing well." I know I often think the compliments, but don't verbalize them. Why would I say it again if I said it last week? Wouldn't it be too much? But I have to change that mindset. Recognition could be the difference between someone feeling invisible and someone feeling seen. We're a boisterous, some say loud, laughing nation, despite our trials and tribulations. Maybe it's to do with our generous sunshine. We are generally a happy nation. I love to laugh, and luckily my family also love to laugh at silly things, at ourselves, during board games, and at quick-witted remarks. I do sometimes hold it back, especially if I feel a bit intimidated by the company. But on the whole, I joke and laugh generously. When last did you share a laugh with someone, or just had a giggle by yourself? And there you have it. The 7 other areas where I strive to be generous. Some are standalone, but others often work in combo, like love and patience, time and energy, or knowledge and recognition. I hope this conversation got you thinking about where you can be more generous, where you can share more of yourself. If you enjoyed this conversation, I think you may like the conversation on how I lost my spark and 5 ways I'm getting back my fun and joy. Wishing you a week filled with generosity and, of course, sprinklings of fairy dust. Until next time, goodbye.